Hey folks, after the introduction, the first chapter, the first part of her experiment is in Florida, in a chapter called Serving in Florida. So this one, I gave you a bunch of questions, and because I wanted to start on a really kind of in-depth foot. So let's just jump right into it. The first question from your discussion. On page 12, Arnreich writes, "In this world, I am baby, honey, blonde, and most commonly girl." The question is this demeaning? How is it demeaning, and what effect does this have on someone, especially after several years or decades? So, mainly this, any term, sometimes even a nickname, that you're called that's not really your name or not kind of individual to you, it demeans you a little bit. It demeans folks. Some of you may be servers or kind of have other retail jobs, and it's kind of like the same as saying, "Hey, you know, get over here." If it's nothing individual, then they're not really recognizing you as an individual. You're just something. And over years and decades, like Gail has, I'm sure, experienced this. After all, she's in her 50s, and this is pretty much the only job she's had. So she's had this for years, and there's probably some leeway here, but all of that kind of demeaning names and behavior over time makes it so, sometimes you tend to believe it yourself, that you're not worth being an individual or unique in any way. It also kind of gets into your beneath the customers or management or anyone else, maybe your coworkers or friends or whoever does that. All right, so that's first one. Second one, early in chapter 1, Arnreich notes that in terms of low-wage work, the want ads are not a reliable measure of the actual jobs available at any particular time. We'll explain why this is so, and what does this imply about work being done. Well, if there's a lot of people kind of coming and going, it's probably not the best job. It's probably not a good work environment. It's probably too much work or too stressful of work for the pay, and so you get a lot of people leaving, and that's the turnover. That's why the want ads are not a reliable source of what jobs are out there. Believe me, I've certainly had jobs where you turn in an application and it just goes at the bottom of a large pile that you just kind of wait forever for to get called. And this again is, of course, because the job culture, whatever else, is not good. And so people leave, and all they do is take the next application from the top of that stack and, whoever's next. So it doesn't look good. That should be like a first red flag for anyone who's got those jobs or is applying for those jobs. All right, number 3, I go as usual for housekeeping and am sent instead to try out as a waitress at the attached family restaurant. Why do you think she keeps getting pushed to jobs other than the ones she applies for? What conditions or characteristics are involved in management's decision? So this is a tricky one. This is also going to be the one that your first essay centers around. So if you'll notice, there's a lot going on here. She tries to apply for and get the housekeeping position. She doesn't get it, as the question implies. She also makes the observation that there's a certain group that makes up for most of the housemaids or the hotel maids at this particular place. And so as she is moved into being a server, she also notes that there are specific groups in specific jobs. You'll notice that most of the servers are women. You'll notice the cooks and busboys are men. Also, kind of an interesting thing is notice who's primarily the managers and supervisors and bosses, not just in this chapter. So the kind of the short of this is she was put into servers, one, partly because of her race, partly because of her language speaking ability, as a server is has contact with customers. Then there is that assumption that her being a white woman, she can speak English and English well, and so she's the kind of face front of the store, and they want that image of her to be the image of the store. Second, she's female. If she had been male, then she probably would have been a busser or a cook, a different job. If you notice at her side or Jerry's, most of the servers are women. There's not too many male servers. So there's kind of that with gender as well. Probably something to do with the idea, the stereotype that women are the homemakers, nurturers, and so they're serving and taking care of the customers. So race and gender kind of have, at least the stereotypes of those, have some sort of role in this as well. And you'll kind of see that in some of the other chapters. In fact, the next chapter, she specifically talks about that, which we'll get to. All right, number 4, as Ehrenreich begins her job at her side, the first paragraph she writes combines both aspects of serving that are difficult with aspects of Gail's life. In fact, I will read some of that to you. Let's see. Where's that page? 16 to 17. And so, let's see. The next 8 hours, I run after the agile Gail, absorbing bits of instruction along with fragments of personal tragedy. All food must be trade, and the reason she's so tired today is that she woke up in a cold sweat thinking of her boyfriend who was killed a few months ago in a scuffle in an upstate prison, no refills on lemonade, and the reason he was in prison is that a few DUIs caught up with him. That's all. Could have happened to anyone. Carried the creamers to the table in a monkey bowl, never in her hand, and after he was gone, she spent several months living in her truck, peeing in a plastic pee bottle and reading by candlelight at night. But you can't live in a truck in the summer since you need to have the windows down, which means anything can get in from mosquitoes on up. So, intertwining those two things, the professional instructions with the kind of personal issues. She does that, first of all, in that paragraph, to show how, one, the kind of physical parts of her job are taxing, as well as the stuff from her personal life is also taxing. And to put them both in kind of back-to-back sentences shows that they're kind of intertwined, that one affects the other, and vice versa, if you will. So the personal life takes a toll economically, which of course is part of her job, and her job and her wage and everything else kind of affects the personal life as well. So they're intertwined. They can't really be separated from each other. I know the common advice is, leave your work at work and don't come home with all of that baggage. But oftentimes that's incredibly difficult to do, and especially with low wages. We'll actually see a lot more of that once we get into looking at more of the financials of everything, the numbers. All right. Number 5, at one point, Ehrenreich details the living conditions of her fellow coworkers at her side. Reviewing these arrangements, explain how each setup compares with the author's own 500 efficiency quarters. It's basically like a studio apartment. But let me go, I'll read through a couple of these just to kind of give us an idea here. Okay, so we've got Gail, who we mentioned before, is sharing a room in a well-known downtown flop house for $250 a week. Her roommate, male friend, has been hitting on her, driving her nuts, but the rent would be impossible alone. $250 a week, that's about $1,000 per month. That's difficult on minimum wage. Let's see, Annette, a 20-year-old server who's 6 months pregnant and abandoned by her boyfriend, lives with her mother, a postal clerk. That's a little better. Marianne, who's a breakfast server, and her boyfriend are paying $170 a week for one-person trailer. That's not too bad. $170 a week comes to about $680 per month, maybe $700, but split between two people, not too bad. I'm going to skip down a couple here. Tina, another server, and her husband are paying $60 a night for a room at the Days Inn. This is because they have no car and the Days Inn is within walking distance of the Hearthside. When Marianne is tossed out of her trailer for subletting, against the rules, she leaves her boyfriend and moves in with Tina and her husband. Again, into three people in a hotel room. Now, the other thing that's tricky is, let's see, she's paying $60 a night for a room at the Days Inn. So, $60 a night, 30 nights per month, that's about $1,800. And even if you split it between three people at $600, that's still quite a lot. And then finally, we've got Joan, who had fooled me with her numerous and tasteful outfits. Hostesses wear their own clothes. She lives in a van parked behind a shopping center at night and showers in Tina's motel room. The clothes are from thrift shops. So, relatively speaking, Barbara Ehrenreich's $500 efficiency is actually pretty good. She's got a place to herself. She's got at least some small amenities. She's not living out of a car. She's not paying a huge amount that takes away from her wages. So Barbara, again, has it pretty good compared to some of her coworkers. Now, the last one's kind of a tricky one, especially when we're talking about George. Number 6 reads, waiting tables at Jerry's, the author meets a young dishwasher named George. Who is he? What's his story? Why do he and Ehrenreich befriend one another? And why does she not intervene when she learns from an assistant manager that George is thought to be a thief? I'm going to address the last one because that's the one that's most confounding. She doesn't quite, name what happens. But it's interesting. A lot of times students say, oh, she didn't speak up because she didn't want to get fired. She didn't want her experiment to end at that point by speaking up and possibly getting fired, things like that. It seems to be, and it's not a journalistic kind of integrity thing, it seems to be something much more psychological. In fact, I do have another part of the book that I'll read to you. This is on page 41 towards the end of the chapter. Why didn't I intervene? Certainly not because I was held back by the kind of moral paralysis that can mask as journalistic objectivity. On the contrary, something new, something loathsome and servile had infected me, along with the kitchen odors that I can still sniff. I'm moderately brave, but plenty of brave people shed their courage in POW camps, and maybe something similar goes on in the infinitely more congenial milieu of the low-wage American workplace. Maybe in a month or two at Jerry's, I might have regained my crusading spirit. Then again, in a month or two, I might have turned into a different person altogether. Say the kind of person who would have turned George in. So this is kind of alluding to this idea that we were kind of looking at as far as number one, and what the kind of psychology of someone turns into after years of this, or even just a few months. There is this kind of subservience. If you are constantly taking orders from managers and taking, I don't know, almost abuse from customers or managers, things like that, if you keep getting disrespected even, then at some point that really wears you down. Again, I'd be interested to hear what students who have these types of jobs, what they think and what they've seen and what they've noticed about themselves, whether or not this kind of low energy, this kind of being beaten down kind of thing happens. And so this is what the author notices in herself, is that she does kind of become beaten down and much more passive than she thought she would be. All right, that's it. I know that was a long one. I apologize. I'll try to make these a little bit shorter. But that's it for serving. The next couple will be the last two for this book. So I will see you in Scrubbing in Maine.